بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد كلما ذكرك وذكره الذاكرون وكلما غفل عن ذكرك وذكره الغافلون. Okay, in the previous lesson we looked at the obligation of zakat. We looked at the conditions for those who zakat is obligatory upon. We looked at the nisab, and we looked at masail related to the possession of that wealth for one lunar year. So in today's lesson, we're going to look at niyyah and issues related to niyyah. And we're going to look at, before we look at zakatable assets, I'm going to explain what are the criteria for any wealth to be zakatable. What is zakatable wealth? Okay, there's a particular criteria which is necessary for us to know before we understand whether we can pay zakat or whether we should pay zakat on something or not. For example, does your TV attract zakat? The question. Yeah. A second car that's parked in our driveway, which we originally bought for the intention of resale, but then later on we decided to use it personally. Does that attract zakat? A summer house that we've got, which is our own personal ownership, does that attract zakat? Houses on rent. So these are things we need to look at. All right, so we look at niyyah first of all then. So first of all, it is conditional for the validity of the payment of zakah for the niyyah to accompany its payment or its separation from a person's wealth. Okay, so the payment of zakat is not valid and it is not considered zakat until you have a niyyah. And that niyyah is either in one of two forms. Either it is attached to the wealth at the point when you give it to the faqir. Okay, so you at the point that you pay the zakat to the faqir, or in nowadays when we transfer the money or we pay it online, for those that do it online, at that moment we have the niyyah of zakat. That's the first way your zakat is valid with the correct niyyah. The second, it's separation from a person's wealth. What that means is this: I earlier in the year intently separate £300 in my account. Okay, as in separate meaning I keep it to one side and don't spend that £350. Okay, with the intention that this is my money for zakat. Now, if I give that £350 to charity now, I've had the intention of that money being for zakat since the moment that I separated it. So it's not conditional for me at that moment to have a niyyah at the point of giving it, because I already made the niyyah when I separated it from the rest of my wealth. You understood? Okay. So these are the two ways you will have the niyyah for your zakat. Either you have the niyyah at the point that you give the zakat, or you have the niyyah when you are keeping that money separate from the rest of your money. Okay. You have the niyyah at either one of those times. And the reason why niyyah is conditional is because zakat is first and foremost ibadah. Okay, it is worship of Allah, and ibadah is not correct without the intention of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, and the place of the niyyah is the heart. Therefore, if an individual incorrectly states something or incorrectly types something, they intended it for it to be zakat in their heart, it will be valid. Example, when I'm on the charity websites, many of them you've got options. You can do zakatul fitr, you can do zakat, you can do sadaqah, you can do many things. Yeah, I might press the wrong button, so perhaps I selected the sadaqah option, or I selected the zakatul fitr option, or I selected the lillah option, whatever it is. But my intention, I did that incorrectly, but my intention was what? My intention was, I am giving zakat, I am paying zakat with this money. Yeah, I'm not giving zakatul fitr, I'm paying zakat of my wealth. Or I'm not paying, sadaqah, any type of sadaqah, I'm giving zakat. As long as I had the intention, it will suffice. Okay, I have no need to redo the zakat just because I selected the wrong option, or I might have said it wrong. For example, somebody's writing a receipt for me who's collecting money for zakat, and I incorrectly say zakatul fitr, I incorrectly say sadaqah. It makes no difference as long as the niyyah of a person's heart is zakat. Okay, it will be valid then. And that tells us we don't have to call it zakat. I can call it a gift. I can call it a loan if I wanted to. What that means is this, if somebody is receiving zakat from me, do I have to name it zakat when I give it to them? I don't have to do that at all. Yeah, I can name it as a gift. If I know this person is a faqir, but this individual does not ask for charity, okay, and I don't want to make it apparent, okay, that this individual is taking charity, then I can say, okay, this is a gift for you. Now, my naming it a gift doesn't make it invalid. It's still zakat because my intention was zakat at the point of giving it. Okay. All right, and that brings us on to the next point. It is not conditional for the recipient to be aware that it is zakat. They may be told it is a gift. Okay, it is not conditional for them to know that it is zakat. All right then. The next point is then intention can also be made at the point of giving the wealth away whilst the zakat is in the possession of the recipient, not after that. So if I gave money to a faqir, or I gave money to the collector, the charity collector, whoever it representative, whoever it is, I give it to them. At the point that I gave it to them, I did not intend zakat. I intended sadaqah. I intended a gift. I intended zakatul fitr, whatever. As long as that wealth is still with the recipient, he hasn't spent it. It hasn't been, so the collector still got it. He hasn't given it to the faqir yet. Yeah, hasn't been distributed to the faqir yet. And the faqir hasn't used it yet. I can make an intention for it to be zakat up until it is used by the recipient. Okay, so mathalan, I gave £250 to someone. My intention at the time was what? Sadaqah or zakat or something else. And then I went home and I realized, okay, my time for zakat of this year has come very close. So I say, okay, I've just given £250. It hasn't got to the recipient, still got it, still with the recipient. It hasn't gone, it hasn't spent it yet. He hasn't used it yet. Okay, now I can intend, okay, that £250 that I paid, that is zakat. Okay, it all depends on us knowing whether or not the recipient has used that wealth or not. Okay, if they've used it, we cannot make a fresh intention for that to be zakat. If they haven't used it, we can now intend that to be zakat. Okay. All right then. All right, now another scenario of paying the zakat, and this is the scenario of which is very common in our day and age, is zakat with a wakil. This is when you are giving zakat through a third party, or, through a representative, through another individual. So you give the money to somebody else, they distribute the zakat on your behalf. Yep, what we call zakat with a wakil. Now, there are certain things that we must be aware of in this scenario, because this applies to most of us in today's day and age. We give our zakat through another individual who is our representative, who is an agent. We give them the money and they distribute it on our behalf. All right, then. What's conditional with when you are giving it to a wakil is the intention of the one who is giving, not the intention of the wakil. Okay, this is very important to understand. So if I, as the one who is giving, intended zakat, but the wakil gave the money without intention. So for example, I gave money to a certain individual. I said to him, okay, this is zakat wealth. Okay, that individual, when he gave it to the poor person, he just gave it as sadaqah, just general charity. He didn't give it as particularly zakat. That will be jaiz. Okay, as long as the recipient was a faqir, it will be jaiz. Because what's conditional is my intention as the giver, not the intention of the one who is entrusted with the wealth. Okay. And that's why, for that same reason, I can give the zakat and I can say that this is a gift, or I can say it is XYZ, or even the wakil can say that on my behalf, and it will still be it will still be a valid zakat. Okay. Rather, even the wakil does not even have to know. For example, I could give £200 to him and say, okay, give this to the poor. That could be zakat. He doesn't have to know. It will still be valid on my behalf as long as it gets to the recipients. You understood that? Come in. Come in. So we finish at 8:30 or 8:45 actually. Otherwise, I can see you. All right then. So those are masail related to the wakil. All right. Here's another issue then. You know, when you give the wealth to the wakil, the representative, charity or the person, whoever it is, who's distributing your wealth on your behalf, what can that person do with that wealth? Who can they give it to, and what authority do they have to distribute that wealth? So these are important rulings. So if I give my zakat to a wakil, to a representative, and I say to that person, give my zakat to a faqir, to a poor person, to a recipient of zakat. Yeah, I say give it to any poor person, any possible recipient of zakat. All right, that wakil now has the authority to distribute that wealth to any person that he sees fit who is suitable and can receive that zakat. Can give it to any. Hatta he can even give it to his child. If his child is a faqir, he could give it to his child. He could even give it to his wife if she was faqira. Yeah. Or if she's giving it, if a wakil is a wakila, she's a she can give it to her husband. Okay, if he is a faqir. Why? Because when I gave the zakat to the representative, I said to them, you give the zakat, I give you authority, give the zakat to a faqir. I did not specify. So he can give it to any faqir that he sees fit, even if that is his own family, because I've given that authority to him. They, however, do not have the permissibility to give that wealth to themselves if they are a faqir. So it could be the case that the representative that I'm giving the wealth to, he is a poor man himself. If I say to him, give this wealth to a faqir, can he give that to himself? No. The answer is no. There is one scenario where he can give it to himself. What is that scenario? That scenario is when I say to that individual, you may give this wealth to whoever you want. So I don't specify, as in I don't say give it to a faqir or give it to a miskin, because if I say that, then I'm specifying he has to give it to somebody else. If I say to him, do with it what you will, as in whatever you wish to do with it, you do with it. Just make sure it gets to a genuine recipient. That person then can take it for himself. Okay, it is jais for that individual to take it from themselves. Now, this is where the person who is giving the zakat needs to be very careful, okay, and be clued on about with regards to these rulings, okay? So when you give it to that individual, understand with what terms and conditions you are giving it, okay, such that it can be given to the correct recipients, okay? So those are a few things for us to understand. Now, in our day and age, it's very, very important that a person, when you're giving it to a wakil, and today's wakil are your charities, more or less. They are the people who are the representatives. They take the wealth and they distribute it. It's very, very important that when you are choosing a wakil, so a charity in today's day and age, you are 100% certain, you've done your research, that their zakat is a 100% donation policy, and they're not using zakat for anything which is impermissible for zakat to be used for, okay? And it is a very, very unfortunate. There are lots of organizations who take zakats and they use the wealth of zakat for things that zakat wealth is not permissible to be used upon, okay? So they will use it for the printing of books. They will use it for their institutions. They will use it for, public welfare things like, wells and these types of, or hospitals, zakat cannot be given to any of those causes. Zakat is the milk, it is the ownership of the fuqara. It has to reach the hands of the faqir. That is zakat. Other types of sadaqah can be given to the hospitals, can be given to the institutions, can be given to the printing of books and spreading of ilm and da'wah. Other types of sadaqah can be given for that. Zakat is the haqq of the fuqara. And Allah Azza wa Jal clearly tells us in the Quran, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ. Indeed, the zakat belong lil fuqara. Lam here comes in the Arabic language for the meaning of ownership. Lil fuqara. Allah says zakat belongs to the fuqara, to the poor. So it is not permissible, therefore, for zakat to be given to any public welfare schemes or anything of that nature whatsoever. Okay. Now there are fatwas that you will find. I mean, you can find a fatwa for anything in today's day and age, whatever you want to make permissible for yourself. I can guarantee you can Google it, and Google will give you a fatwa from somewhere that will make permissible what you want to be halal in your deen. But then you are not following the religion of Allah. You are following the religion of your own nafs, not Islam. So we can make halal for ourselves whatever we want through Google. Yeah, or through finding a imam or a sheikh who will give the fatwa that I want. It's like that hypocrite who came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, "Ya Rasulullah, what's the ruling of this?" The Messenger of Allah gave him the hukm. He wasn't happy. So then he went to Sayyidina Abu Bakr. Oh Abu Bakr, I went to the Messenger of Allah. He gave me this ruling, but I'm not happy. What's your ruling? If the Messenger of Allah has given that ruling, my ruling is the same. Go away from me, Abu Bakr said. Then he went to Sayyidina Umar. And that was his biggest mistake. Because when he went to Sayyidina Umar, he said, "Oh Umar, I went to the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, and I went to Abu Bakr and they gave me this ruling, but I'm not happy with the ruling." And Sayyidina Umar then did what Sayyidina Umar does with the hypocrites. So let us not be like that. You know, some people go to one Imam, I don't like his answer. Go to the next Imam, I don't like his answer.
Please repeat.
And then, okay, this guy's answer is suitable for me, so I'm going to take that. And that's not deen. That's fatwa shopping. That's haram. Okay, so we must have, treat our deen with a level of seriousness. Allahu Akbar. Okay, so when you give it to the charity, then make sure that the charity that you're giving it to distributes the zakat properly, and they are giving it to the poor. They're not giving it to anything else. All right, we've got some questions here. What is the criteria of a qualified wakil? Who can be a wakil? Anybody can be a wakil, as long as they are baligh and they are aqil, so they are mature, they've reached puberty, and they are of sound mind, and they have the ability to give your zakat to the correct recipient. Then they can be your wakil. Okay, it is best that you choose somebody upright, somebody who knows the masail of sharia to a certain extent, somebody who is practicing, so somebody who's trustworthy, so that they get your zakat to the right place. Question. Yeah. All right. Somebody else asked that, so I'll come back to that. Can they zakat as zakat? Can the charities take zakat under the category of zakat administrators? Can they keep 100%? Absolutely not. No. Zakat administrators that are mentioned in the Quran as one of the recipients are those employed by an Islamic government, i.e., those who are under or those who are representatives of the Khalifa. Okay, and that will happen in an Islamic state. That is not a charity in today's day and age. They cannot keep 100% under any circumstances. So your question was, if you give it to a charity and the charity gives it to the wrong place, yeah, your zakat is not done. Yeah, if you're unaware, then you can't do anything about it, isn't it? But if you're aware that they've given it to the wrong place, you must repeat that zakat. Okay, so we must be very careful. And look, everything's transparent. Go to the Charity Commission's website. Every charity has its by government law. Every charity has its details on there. You know who's donating the money and who's not. It's that simple. If they're donating 100% of their money, it will show. And if they're taking cuts and X is administration costs and Y is this and Y is and Z is that, then don't give zakat there. Okay, don't give zakat there. But we'll talk about in detail who can receive zakat. That's a separate section. We're going to talk about that in detail. Could you please repeat when a wakil can take zakat for themselves? Yes, a wakil can take zakat from themselves when the one who is giving the zakat says to them, here's the zakat, you can do with it what you will. Okay, so here's the zakat, you can do with it what you please. Then that person can take it for themselves if they are a faqir. If they're a faqir. If they're not a faqir, then they're stealing money. And that's haram. All right then. So those are the rulings with regards to a representative when you're giving your zakat. So those are some important considerations for us for the payment of zakat. Hopefully all of that is clear, inshallah. All right, let's move on then. The next thing that I want to do before we move on to talking about zakatable assets, so we got gold, silver, cash, trade stock, and all everything else which is additional. Before we move on to those things, I want to talk about the conditions which make something zakatable. What are the conditions for wealth to be zakatable? Condition number one. Condition number one is what we call an-nama. Nama is appreciation or growth. Yeah, appreciation or growth. Now, when I say appreciation or growth, what we mean is zakat, the wealth that is zakatable will be wealth that has the potential to grow. It doesn't have to actually grow. Yeah. So for example, if a person has the nisab, or person has, so they have, let's say by today's gold rate, nisab I think is about 4,200 and something pounds, the current amount of nisab on gold. Somebody has that. Okay, a person has that in their account. That might not grow by even a penny the whole year, but it had the potential to grow. Wealth, by its very nature, especially wealth, which is our currency is backed by, or supposed to be backed by, gold and silver. Wealth has the potential to grow. Okay, so even if it doesn't grow, but it has the potential to grow, that will be zakatable wealth. So for example, all of the cash that we have, the gold and silver that we have, all of these things are things which have the potential to grow and appreciate. Okay, so they will be zakatable, therefore. Okay, they will be zakatable. Likewise, trade stock. When a person has trade stock has the potential to grow in its increase in its value. So that's the first condition. Then wealth must be, it must be that zakatable wealth is that wealth which has the potential to grow. Okay, has the possibility of appreciation and increase. This is why any wealth then which is taken, and it is not anything which is owned, but it's not for the potential of, it's not for the reason of resale. Anything which is taken, which is not taken for the intention of resale, okay, but it is taken for personal usage, okay, none of that will attract zakats. Anything which is taken for personal usage and not resale will not therefore attract zakats. Okay, so that includes everything. That could be transport, that could be a house, that could be whatever it is. You buy it and you don't have the intention of resale, you bought it for personal usage, there is no zakat due in such things. Okay. Yes. Okay, I'm going to come to rent shortly. I'm going to come to rent. All right then. A couple of questions here. There's a question about sayyids. We're going to talk about sayyids. That's all coming. Who can receive zakat, who can't? We're going to talk about that later. Gold coin. If you buy gold coin, you'll have to pay zakat on gold coin. Gold appreciates in value. It is zakatable. You will absolutely pay zakat on gold. All right, so that's the first condition then. Okay, it is that which has the potential to grow. All right, the second condition for something to be zakatable, condition number 2, is that it reaches the value of the nisab. It reaches the value of the nisab. Okay, so if it's gold, gold has its own nisab, which we're going to talk about in the next slide. Silver has its own nisab. Okay, cash is measured by the nisab of gold or silver. Trade stock is also measured by the nisab of gold and silver. Okay, shares and stocks, investments, these are also measured by that same nisab of gold and silver. Okay, so that's the second condition then. Any wealth that we own has to reach the nisab level. Okay, if it doesn't reach the nisab level, it is not zakatable. So I have gold, for example. I have, for example, we can say, I don't know, I have 20 grams, for example, let's say that. All right, 20 grams of gold, and this is provided I have no other wealth, okay, which I can add to it to reach the nisab. 20 grams of wealth is not zakatable. Why? Because it doesn't reach the nisab. It doesn't reach the nisab. So it has to reach the nisab. Now, I'm going to cover this, I'm going to mention this in more detail later, but just as a note to yourselves at that point, just right here, if the individual categories of wealth don't reach the nisab individually, you will add them all together so that you reach the nisab. So if the individual categories don't reach the nisab independently, you will add them together so they reach the nisab. What do I mean by that? I mean this. If a person only has 10 grams of gold, they haven't reached the nisab of gold there. A person only has 200 grams of silver, they haven't reached the nisab of silver there. A person only has 300 pounds, that's not the nisab, they haven't reached the nisab there with cash. Okay, now independently, my wealth, each category doesn't reach the nisab. But if I add them all up, if I put them together, add them all up, it equals the nisab of gold or silver, then I have to pay zakats. Everybody get that ruling? Yeah. So you add all of your wealths, various wealths up in order to reach the nisab, so that zakat can be paid on the wealth. Okay, that's very important for us to understand. For example, look, a person's got 20 grams of gold. Now that's not the nisab. The nisab of gold is 87, as we're going to talk about. So he's only got 27 grams of gold, not 87. Alongside that, he's got 20,000 pounds of cash. And this guy says, what? Okay, I'm not paying zakat on the gold because he hasn't reached the nisab. Is that correct? Answer is no. What you have to do is you have to add that gold to the rest of your wealth and pay the zakat on the total. That's how zakat works. Okay, you pay it on the total. All right, so that's the second condition. Number 3. Third condition. The passing of 1 lunar year upon the wealth. And we talked about this in detail in the last lesson. So I'm not going to go through the details of that. We talked about that. And this is because the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us there is no zakat in the wealth of a person until the year has passed. Okay. And of course, when we say the passing of a full lunar year, that means, of course, as I mentioned last week, anything that you get in the midst of the year, bonuses, windfalls, inheritance, extra cash, you don't wait for a year to put that to pay the zakat on that. You add that to your wealth, and at the end of the year, you pay zakat on the total. All right, you pay zakat on the total at the end of the year, as I mentioned last week. All right, there's a question here. If you own a car for personal usage, but later sell it, does it have to be included as a zakatable asset? Okay, so in that scenario, what a person will do is they will take that cash or the money that they got for the car, and that will become part of their total wealth, and you'll pay zakat on the total. So I own the car for personal usage. I sold that car. I made, I sold it for £5,000, for example. That £5,000 is now part of my wealth, isn't it? I pay zakat on the total amount of the wealth. What if someone has more wealth than 612 grams of silver, but less than 87.48 grams of gold? How is that treated? Yep, you add both amounts of wealth together and all of the rest of your wealth together, and you pay zakat on the total. That's how it's treated. That's what we do. If any individual category doesn't reach the nisab, add them all together, pay zakat on the total. All right. Condition number 4. Condition number 4, complete ownership. Condition number 4, complete ownership. In order for something to be zakatable, you must have complete ownership over that particular thing. Okay? So you must have complete ownership. So any wealth which has no owner, like lost property, for example, or any wealth which a person has not complete or no complete ownership over, they will not pay zakat on that. For example, I am owed £300 from another person, but he's bankrupt. He's never going to be able to pay that to me. I haven't got ownership over that £300 now, have I? Because it's not gonna materialize that he's gonna pay me back. Therefore, there's no zakat on that. Okay. So complete ownership is the next condition. Condition number 4, you must own the zakat completely, the wealth completely. Okay. This is why there are certain types of drop shipping, I believe. Now, in drop shipping, there's another type of trade as well, but I can't remember what it's called. In these types of trade, I think forex. That's right. You do not become a complete owner of these shares. What happens is they come and they are sold. They come in, to some form of. It's not complete ownership, but they come to you and then they are sold immediately. It's like that. Now, first of all, forex and drop shipping are not permissible because in finance law in Islam, it's not permissible to sell something that you are not the complete owner of. So drop shipping and forex trading, or any trading that involves selling what you don't own, is not jaiz in Islam. But somebody did ask me on the day that I have to pay zakat, I became, I was doing forex, and this came into my, this came to me, this amount of wealth or this share, whatever it was. It came to me, do I have to pay zakat on that? Is it part of my wealth? The answer is you don't have complete ownership over that. Rather, it's sold before you become the complete owner. So it's not permissible as a transaction, and you definitely don't pay zakat on that type of investment or that type of share. It has to be complete ownership. Okay, number 5, 5th condition of zakatable wealth. It has to be free of your personal necessities. It has to be free of your personal necessities. Okay. So that means, for example, your house that you live in, okay, houses that you've put on rent, okay, those houses that you put on rent, there's no zakat on them. There's zakat on the rental income, not on the houses themselves. Yep. Clothes that you wear, clothes that you've got that you're going to wear, transport, for example, furniture, tools of usage, books of knowledge, all of these things. These are all considered personal necessities, okay, personal items of usage. Your wealth, zakatable wealth, does not involve any of those things. Okay, so there's no zakatable, none of those things are zakatable, and zakatable wealth will not involve any of those things. Okay. So for example, I have, let's say I've got somebody's got a house and furniture worth several hundreds of thousands of pounds, example. Do they pay zakat on that? The answer is no. That is not zakatable wealth. Your house, it might be millions of pounds in value. Your furniture might be thousands of pounds in value. It's not zakatable wealth. Why? Because they are considered your own personal necessities and personal usage items. Likewise, your car might be worth several hundreds of thousands of pounds. Yep, or several thousands of pounds maybe. Again, it's your personal usage item. It is not zakatable wealth. All right. Likewise, your technology that you own, TVs and the like, these are all items of personal usage. There's no zakat due on any of them. Is it correct that so there is no zakat on properties, only the income from the properties? Yeah, so if you bought a property with the intention of resale, then it becomes trade stock. Then you have to pay zakat on the value of the property. But if you bought a property to put it on rent, or you bought it for yourself, then there is no zakat due on that, on the value of the property. If it's on rent, then the zakat due on the rental income only. Okay. Is it correct that if you have rental properties, those are zakat, not zakatable on rent receivable? Yes, the rent receivable is zakatable. The rental properties are not zakatable. That's correct. Right, that's the fifth condition. Okay, so those are the 5 conditions with regards to a person, or with regards to wealth being zakatable. Okay. All right then. Any other issue? All right, we covered the scenarios of if you buy something for personal usage and then you decide to sell it, or the opposite, if you buy it for resale and then you decide to keep it in your own personal usage. We mentioned that. We mentioned windfalls and bonuses during the year are added to your total wealth and you pay zakat on the whole amount at the end. We also mentioned that various different types of wealth, even if independently they don't reach the nisab, you add all of the nisab, all of the different categories of wealth up so that you do reach the nisab and you pay zakat on the total. We mentioned that. Any type of wealth that you receive, whether it's from a gift, whether it's from inheritance, whether it's through a bequest, any way you receive it, you will have to pay zakat on it. So for example, it's not just like your savings account, all types of wealth that you have. All right, inheritance you've received from parents or any other family members, gifts that you've received, bequests that you've received, whatever it is, profit from business, any type of wealth will be zakatable. Okay. Okay then. That covers all of that, more or less. So those are the conditions to understand what type of wealth is zakatable and what type of wealth is not zakatable. All right. All right, moving on. Oh, there are questions here. What about land, for example, in Pakistan? Land is not zakatable. Land itself is not zakatable. But if the land is rented out, then there's zakat on the rental income. Or if there are crops growing on that land, then there is zakat due on the crops, on the production of the crops. 1/10 of that will be given to charity. Okay, but land which is just, you've just got land in Pakistan, neither is it rented out and there's no income coming from it, and neither is it bought with the intention of resale. Okay, then there is no zakat on it. So I've just got land. I haven't bought it with the intention of resale. I'm not growing crops on there such that I give it charity on the crops, and neither have I rented it out, or the property out there is no property on it being rented out. There's no zakat on just land itself. All right, in a family of 4, for example, each member has investment savings accounts, and each year, by agreement of the rest of the family, one person works out the zakat on the total amount and pays it on behalf of everyone. Should the money come from each of the accounts, or can one account pay the total zakats? Okay, the money should come out from each of the accounts. So I assume that each account is in the name of each member of each of the family. So they've all got their own pot. I assume that that's what's happening here. If they've got their own pot, then the money should come from each of the accounts. Yeah, each pot has its own obligation to be given, so it should be taken from each of the pots. All right then. Let's move on. All right, so that is those are zakatable conditions for zakatable wealth. Or we've dealt with niyyah. Now we're looking at zakatable assets. So in today's lesson, I don't think we're going to get to cash. We'll talk about cash in the next lesson, inshallah. But let's talk about gold and silver in today's lesson. So what is the nisab of gold, and what is the nisab of silver, and what amount is due in terms of zakat? Okay. So first of all, the zakat of gold. All right, the first thing we must understand with regards to gold and silver is this: whether it is jewelry, whether it is ornaments, whether it's just raw gold pieces, gold nuggets or silver nuggets, utensils, which are not permissible for us to have gold and silver utensils. But if somebody did have that, for example, any form of gold or silver is zakatable. Any form, whatever it is, jewelry, ornaments, utensils, whatever it is, it will be zakatable. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, الذين يكنزون الذهب والفضة ولا ينفقونها في سبيل الله فبشرهم بعذاب أليم. Those who hoard gold and silver and do not give the zakat on it in the way of Allah, then give them the news of a painful punishment, Allah says. So Allah Azza wa Jalla in the Quran, when He said those who hoard gold and silver, He did not stipulate gold jewelry or gold ornaments, or He said gold and silver, subhanahu wa ta'ala, mutlaqan. So any type of gold or silver that a person possesses, there will be zakat paid on that. Okay, it doesn't matter what it is. Okay, now what is the amount of gold that zakat that is the what is the nisab of gold that zakat is due upon? 87.848 grams of gold, which currently is 4,223 pounds and 53 pence, 48 pounds and 28 pence per gram. I think that's the value last I checked. This is something that the day that you pay the zakat, you will check the gold value then. You can check gold rates daily. It's easily accessible on the internet. And you will check your value and then you'll pay the zakat. So that's the nisab of gold. Okay? 4,223 pounds and 53 pence. That's today's value. And obviously it depends. Every single day is going up and down. So you will check on the day that you're giving it, what's the nisab of the gold. So when gold reaches that amount, it is zakatable. Number 2, silver, 612.36 grams. Okay. Now, somebody shouldn't come up and say, I've got 612.35 grams. Zakat is not fard upon me. Yeah. That's, at the end of the day, everybody's got to answer before Allah Azza wa Jal. You should, we should always, this is, round it up. Should always round it up. So if you have 612, approximately 612 grams, or the closest figure, zakat is fard upon you. Okay, pay the zakat on that wealth. That works out 342 pounds and 92 pence. Again, that value will be going up and down, so you will check it on the day that you pay zakat. So that's the amount of silver which is zakatable. All right. Any item which contains 50% or more gold or silver will be paid as gold or silver. Example, a person has a ring. The ring is a gold, it's a gold blend. I think 24 karat is pure gold. All the sisters know these things better. The 24 karat is pure gold, I think, and 22 and then 19 and I think, is it 18 or 19? 18. 18 and then what's less than that? Is it 9? Okay, 9. All right. Yeah. So these are the different percentages, isn't it? Now, whatever is 50% or more, and this is where you're going to have to speak to your jewelers about this. So whatever is 50% or more gold or silver will be treated as gold or silver. So I've got a ring, for example. If I have a ring, the ring is what? 50% silver, and it's 50% bronze or aluminium. Or aluminum, if you want to do the American pronunciation. Or it's what, I don't know, 50% silver and 50% iron, some other metal. I will treat it as silver. I pay zakat on it as though it's silver. Likewise, I've got gold. I've got a ring, maybe it's gold. If it's 50% or more gold, you treat the entire thing as though it's gold. Okay, it'll be zakatable. You'll pay it as though it's gold. And if the other metal is dominant, zakat will be paid on the percentage of gold or silver it contains. Okay, so for example, look, if you have a ring, say the ring is 10% silver, all right, 90% it's a different metal. What do I do? What I do is that amount of silver that is in there, however, so for example, let's say the ring is 50 grams, or the ring is not 50 grams, that's quite heavy. I don't know, 6 grams or 5 grams. The ring is 5 grams. Okay, the ring is 5 grams. Now, 1 gram of that ring is silver and 4 grams are gold. 4 grams are iron, for example. The 1 gram that is silver, zakat will be due on that 1 gram. The 4 grams, no zakat due on that. Right? That's how it will work. The third scenario then is if an item is a mixture of gold and silver. Okay? In that case, you pay zakat on whatever is dominant. So if the ring is predominantly gold, you will pay it as though it's gold. And if it's predominantly silver, pay it as though it's silver. If both are equal, you will pay as gold out of caution. Okay? And remember, in all of this that I'm talking about here, we are talking about the value. The value. Okay, it's the value that we're considering. All right, whatever it's worth. All right, so that's the nisab of gold and silver. Now, I reiterate my words once again. If an individual has, they don't reach the nisab of gold, so a person does not have 87.48 grams of gold. They don't have that, okay? They don't have that amount of gold. They've got less than that amount of gold. But they have other forms of wealth, like silver, like cash, such that if they were to add those other forms of wealth to the value of the gold that they have, it would reach the nisab, then they have to pay the zakats. Okay? So that must be understood very clearly. All right, so you'll add the value of it all up and you'll pay zakat on the total. So I've got 50 grams of gold, example. The 50 grams of gold might be worth what? Let's say 2,000 pounds. So that 2,000 pounds, I've got that. Now, do I not pay zakat on that because it doesn't reach the nisab? No. I look at my other forms of wealth. Maybe I've got 2 grand in cash as well. Okay. Maybe I've got 300 pounds worth of silver as well. Add that all up. So 2 grand plus the 2 grand plus the 300, 4,300. Khalas, pay the zakat. You've reached the nisab. Is that clear? Yeah. So you add the value of it all up so that you reach the nisab and you pay the zakat on the total. Okay. Any other issues? I believe that covers everything. The next thing that we're going to talk about is cash. Now, this is important. So, first of all, what nisab do we use to measure our wealth on? Do we go by the nisab of gold, 4,200 approximately, or do we go by the nisab of silver, which is 300 something pounds, or I believe, or whatever it is currently? Which nisab do we go by? Because depending on which nisab we go by, if you go by the nisab of gold, there will be less people who will be obliged to pay it. However, those that do pay it will be obliged to pay a larger fraction. And if you go by the nisab of silver, there'll be lots of people paying it because lots of people may have 300 in excess of 300 pounds in their account at the end of their year, for example. But the amount that they're going to pay zakat on will be much less. So what we go by when we're measuring our wealth, which nisab we go by, we're going to look at this issue in the next week, inshallah. Okay. So cash we're going to talk about. Trade stock we're going to talk about. Other zakatable assets, so shares, partnerships, trusts, pension schemes, investments, Bitcoin and that kind of stuff. Inshallah, we'll talk about all of these things, investments, in the next week, bi-idhnillah. All right, if everybody can look over the notes, if you have any questions, there's some technical details in today's lesson. Just look over that. If there's any questions, please ask them, inshallah. Online, if there's any questions, please ask. Question here, what about livestock such as cows, sheep, and chicken, or horses which are not used for transport? Livestock have zakat on them. Livestock have zakat on them. I haven't included livestock in the notes purely because the majority of time, every single time that I've taught zakat, I've never encountered a person who has livestock. So I've not found the need to teach the zakat of livestock. If there is somebody, if you have livestock and you need to know the rules, that's not a problem. I can explain them, inshallah. If anybody does have livestock and they need to know those rulings, I can explain. It's not an issue. What is the reason for two different nisab levels? Okay, now the reason for this is the value, the nisab of the gold and the silver in the time of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam were equivalent. It was the same. So the 200 dinars and the 20 dirhams that were obliged, okay, which is the equivalent of the nisab, as I've mentioned, 87, the 80, approximately 87 grams and approximately 612 grams. That the equivalent of that in the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, both levels were the same. So the hukum is that whoever has, and obviously you had two types of wealth, didn't you, in the time of the Messenger of Allah? You had the gold coin or the silver coin, dirham or dinar. Okay, that's why you had the that's why there's either the zakat on the nisab of the gold and the nisab of the silver. It was equal in the time of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Of course, now it's not equal. It is very different. There's a huge disparity between the nisab of gold and the nisab of silver. Okay, so we will measure by only one of them. Okay, and which one we measure by, we're going to talk about that in the next week, inshallah. I'll mention that issue next week in detail. Any other questions? Silver watch. Yes, absolutely. There's zakat on that. All types of silver or gold, Hisham. Personal usage, jewelry, tools, whatever it is. You got zakat, gold or silver in any form, you have to pay zakat on it. So you got a silver watch, you got to pay zakat. The question you should be asking is it jaiz for you to wear a silver watch? You don't need a silver watch to tell you the time. You can buy a leather strap, it'll do the job. It's not permissible to have a silver watch, all silver, because it will be classed as jewelry. And the only jewelry a man is allowed in Islam is a silver ring. Yeah, so a silver watch won't be permissible. A chain watch is permissible if it's used for functionality. It's permissible. It's a tool of use, so it's fine, perfectly fine. Any other questions? What is the ruling of someone who buys a property, rents it out, and then sells it? The ruling of that person is when they bought that property, whilst they were renting it out, all of the income that they were getting whilst they were renting it out, would be paying zakat on that income. They've sold that property, they've got the cash, you pay the zakat on the cash that you've got. So I sold the property, it was £100,000 or whatever it was. I've got that wealth in my account now, isn't it? So I'll pay zakat on the 100,000. Anything else? So you bought it, did you buy it with the intention of resale? Yeah, then you have to pay zakat on its value, even if you lived in it for a couple of years. You bought it with the intention of resale, you're still intending to resale, to sell it on, you have to pay zakat on the value. Wallahu a'lam. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. جزاك الله خيرا. Inshallah, we'll continue next week.